What is the meaning of the ANKH, the ancient Egyptian symbol? It was also used in other cultures, in ancient Israel, as well as ancient Greece, as well in Christendom. The key of life, ANKH. The ANKH, or key of life, is an Egyptian hieroglyphic symbol used to represent the word for life, and by extension is a symbol of life itself. The ANKH has a T-shaped topped droplet-shaped loop, and it was used in writing as a triliteral sign representing the sequence of 3 consonants. And the sequence was found in several Egyptian words, including the term for mirror, floral bouquet, and life. The symbol often appears in Egyptian art as a physical object representing either life or related substances such as air or water, commonly depicted in the hands of an ancient Egyptian deity, sometimes being given by them to the pharaoh. It represents their power to sustain life and to revive human souls in the afterlife. The ANKH was a widespread decorative motif in ancient Egypt, also used decoratively by neighboring cultures. The Copts adopted it into the crux anas and sata, a shape with a circular rather than droplet loop, and used it as a variant of the Christian cross. The ANKH came into widespread use in Western culture in the 1960s, appearing as a symbol of African cultural identity, neo-pagan belief systems, and the Goth subculture. The use in writing. The ancient Egyptian hieroglyph writing, the ANKH, was triliteral sign representing the voice pharyngeal fricative. In the Egyptian language, these consonants were found in the verb meaning live or life, the noun meaning life. One of the common uses for the word N in the ANKH is express the wish that a particular person live. For example, a phrase meaning something like, "you may be healthy and alive," was used in polite context, similar to the English phrase of "if you please." And "be alive, sound, and healthy" was used as an honorific for the pharaoh when he was mentioned in writing. The Egyptian word for oath was also ANKH, because oaths in ancient Egypt began with the form of the word live. The origins. Early examples of the ANKH sign date to the First Dynasty. That's 39 to 29th century BC. There's little agreement on what physical objects the sign originally represented. Scholars believe the sign is a knot formed of a flexible material such as cloth or reeds. And these early versions bear resemblance to the Thiet symbols, the sign that represented the concept of protection. Hieroglyphic writings use the pictorial signs to represent sounds, so that, for example, the hieroglyph for a house could represent the sound PR, which were found in the English word for house, the Egyptian word for house, and the practice known as rebus principle allowed the Egyptians to write the words for things that could not be pictured, such as abstract concepts. Various authors argue that the sign originally represents something other than a knot. Some have suggested it had a sexual meaning. For instance, Thomas Inman, amateur mythologist, 19th century, thought the sign represented the male and female reproductive organs, joining into a single sign. Now, use in religion and art. The Egyptian belief life was a force that circulated throughout the world. Individual living things, including humans, were a manifestation of this force and fundamentally tied to it. And life came into existence at the creation of the world. And cyclical events like the rising and setting of the sun were thought of as reenactments of the original events of creation that maintained and renewed life in the cosmos. Sustaining life was thus the central function of the deities who governed these natural cycles. By extension of the concept of life, the ANKH could signify air or water. In artwork, gods hold the ANKH up to the nose of the king, offering him the breath of life. Hand fans were another symbol of air in Egyptian iconography, and the human servants who normally carried fans behind the king were sometimes replaced in artwork by personified ANKH signs with arms. In scenes of ritual purification, which water was poured over a king or a deceased commoner, the zigzag lines that normally represent water could be replaced by chains of ANKH signs. Amulets made in the shape of hieroglyphic signs were meant to impart to the wearer the qualities represented by the sign. The Egyptians wore amulets in daily life, as well as placing them in tombs to ensure the well-being of the deceased in the afterlife. ANKH-shaped amulets first appeared late in the Old Kingdom, 2700 to 2200 BC, and continued to be used in the late first millennium BC, yet they were rare despite the importance of the symbol. Amulets shaped like a composite sign that incorporated the ANKH was and did and the diged were more widespread. The ANKH signs in two-dimensional art were typically painted blue or black. The earliest ANKH amulets were often made of gold or electrum, a gold and silver alloy. Egyptian phalanx, a ceramic that was usually blue or green, was the most common material for ANKH amulets in later times, perhaps because its color represented life and regeneration. Other cultures, we have an imprint of the seal of the King Hezekiah of Israel with ANKHs on the sides. The people of Syria and Canaan adopted many Egyptian artistic motifs during the Middle Bronze Age, 1950 to 1500 BC, including hieroglyphs, of which the ANKH was by far the most common. It was often placed next to various figures in artwork or shown being held by Egyptian deities who had come to be worshipped in ancient Near East. It was sometimes used to represent water or fertility. Elsewhere in the Near East, the sign was incorporated into Anatolian hieroglyphs to represent the word for life, and the sign was used in the artwork of the Minoan civilization centered on Crete, of course ancient Greece. Minoan artwork sometimes combined the ANKH or the related Tiyet sign with Minoan double axe emblem. Artwork in Meroitic Kingdom, which lay south of Egypt, was heavily influenced by its religion, features the ANKH prominently, and it appears in temples and funerary arts in many of the same contexts as in Egypt, and is also one of the most common motifs in the decoration of Meroitic pottery. The use of the ANKH persisted in Israel into the Iron Age. In 2015, a clay seal, or vula, belonging to King Hezekiah of Judah, 700 BC, was discovered in Jerusalem, which featured ANKHs on either side of the winged sun figure. In Christianity, crux ansata, the ANKH was one of the few ancient Egyptian artistic motifs that continued to be used after the Christianization of Egypt during the 4th and 5th centuries AD. The sign resembles the stavrogram, the diagram of a cross, a sign that resembles a Christian cross with a loop to the right of the upper bar and was used by early Christians as a monograph for Jesus, as well as the crux ansata, or handled cross, which is shaped like an ANKH with a circular rather than oval or teardrop-shaped loop. The stavrogram has been suggested to be influenced by the ANKH, but the earliest Christians uses of the sign date around 200 AD, well before the earliest Christian adoption of the ANKH. The earliest known example of the crux ansata comes from the copy of the Gospel of Judas from the 3rd or 4th century AD. The adoption of this sign may have been influenced by the stavrogram, ANKH, or both. According to Socrates of Constantinople, when Christians were dismantling Alexander the Great's temple, Alexandria's greatest temple, the Serapeum, in 391 AD, they noticed cross-shaped signs inscribed on the stone blocks. Pagans who were present said the sign meant life to come, an indication that the sign Socrates referred to was the ANKH. Christians claimed the sign was their own, indicating that they could easily regard the ANKH as a crux ansata. There is little evidence for the use of the crux ansata in the western half of the Roman Empire, but Egyptian Coptic Christians used it in many media, particularly the decoration of textiles. And this is according to Wikipedia. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.